Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good
Welcome,
evening
everybody.
for those on the East Coast. Good afternoon for those in the West. And hello to everyone else in between. If you will get started in a couple minutes, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, tell us what you teach or what your role is, and where you're from. We'd love to meet you.
Hey, Kimberly. Hey, Maria. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Ryan in Indiana. What's going on, Ryan? Hey, Maria. K5. Nice. Tamara in the city. Good to see you out in NYC. Thanks for staying up late, my East Coast folks. Shout out to Ohio, Keisha in Ohio. We're all over the place. Queens representing, Brooklyn. We have John, superintendent in Wisconsin. Awesome. It makes me so happy to see that we have people from all over the place right now.
I know.
Kentucky. I keep meeting educators from Kentucky. Like, I don't know if it's the water or something, but they're pumping out some like fantastic educators out there. I know we interviewed Chad on the podcast a while ago. They have Donnie Piercy out there. Just so many great people out there.
North Carolina. I am in close to Charlotte, North Carolina. Adrian, welcome. All right, everybody. Well, keep telling us who you are and what you're doing, and we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to run through some helpful tips to make the most of this webinar. If you'd like to access closed captioning, please hit the CC button in your bottom Zoom tray there, and then show subtitles. You'll be able to see everything transcribed. Participate and make comments at any time via the chat. But you can also submit questions using the Q&A feature, and we'll keep track of those and have a dedicated Q&A at the end where we'll go through all of them. You will also receive a certificate of attendance with your webinar recording via Zoom email, either tonight or tomorrow, and then we'll also send you another follow-up email with some of the resources we talked about today. And I'm going to introduce our wonderful speaker today, Eric Cross. If you listen to the Science Connections podcast, then you already know who this is. He is our wonderful host of Science Connections. He is also full-time job as a 7th grade science and technology teacher. He's a grade level lead. And he also, you do some college, some professor work, right?
I do. I have a new course. I'm
Everything.
teaching future science teachers next semester. So I'll be teaching the science methods course.
Yeah. So you teach all of our wonderful kids and our adults, know how to teach everybody. And then we have some other fun stuff for you guys to read. I don't want to embarrass you, Eric, but he does through meaningful learning experiences centered around student agency. He's made STEM accessible to students with his lessons. Some of that he's going to talk about today with his AI tools that he incorporates into science. And we are very, very excited to have him here. So with that, I will stop sharing and kick it over to you, Eric.
Thank you. Educators, thank you for being here after work or up late, taking care of family, all those different things. I just want to thank you. I want to honor your time as well. So hopefully my goal this hour is to at least give you a tool that you can leave with and say like, that was worth the time. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. I'm going to jump into some slides and then we're going to do some demo and then we're going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So let me go ahead and share my screen and let's make sure this is working. All right. Folks on there, maybe you can let me know. You able to see the AI in the science classroom slides? Give it a shout if you can see those. Let me open the chat. Yes, Sandy, thank you. Ryan, awesome, thank you. Okay, let's get started. So there's a quote I like to start off with. It says, if men learn this, it'll implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is generated, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. Now, if there's any history people out there, anybody know where this quote comes from? I'm going to give you like zero think time on this, which is totally not a teacher move. But for the sake of time, if anybody has a idea, feel free to drop in the chat. Um, any takers? Any takers? Give you a hint. Robert's close. Robert, this is actually Plato, and he said it in 370 BC. He was talking about writing back then, and this is something that could actually like be applied to like what we hear about with AI right now. And so we're going to kick off talking about AI in education, specifically in the context of science. So I'm going to do an overview of AI briefly, talk about some classic tools, and then we're going to switch to what the big topic is, which is generative AI. That's the thing that kind of exploded in February, and then the applications in the science classroom. So artificial intelligence has already changed the landscape right now. Data is showing that we're going to see these disruptions depending on what field and industry that you're in. So the need for us as educators to really pivot, adopt, figure things out is crucial right now. We're seeing that the people that are being impacted the most are people in office and administrative positions, but we're also seeing it in legal, medical fields, business and finance. This is already being used. One of the great things about it is this is a future technology that we can teach now to prepare our students for college, high school, and then these skills. We don't even know the jobs that are going to exist using artificial intelligence. That's still emerging. And so we as educators are trying to figure out like, one, how do we equip our kids? But two, how can it make our lives easier and more efficient so we can do what's best for kids and actually be ourselves in front of them and maybe simplify some of the, I don't know, things that are kind of grueling that we can shorten, things that still need to get done, but we could actually do it in a faster way. So AI is really just computer systems that simulate human behavior. It's been out since the 1940s. So it's been out for quite a long time, and you're probably familiar with some of the AI tools that are already out there. The new one is generative AI. The difference between that and old AI or original AI is generative creates something that didn't exist before. So it could be text, it could be images, it could be music, it could be voice, it could be all kinds of things. And that was something that really got popular in February with ChatGPT. OpenAI was one of the first companies to really go public with something like that. And this generative AI really relies on something called prompts. So this is when you're telling it to do something and it communicates back to you in normal human language. And the way you craft your prompts determine what kind of output you get. And so the better your prompt is, the better output that you get. And I'll demonstrate some of that when we do some of the demos towards the second half. In education, the uses for it are personalized learning. We can generate questions. We can give instant feedback to students. We can differentiate. We can support our students with special learning needs. There's so many ideas. And hopefully if in the Q&A, some of you can share some of your ideas because we're in the like Pong phase of AI. And for those of you that are old school gamers, you remember Pong like boop, 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 boop. This is the worst that artificial intelligence will be, like how it is right now. So it's only going to get better. And our little ones, those are AI natives. They're growing up in a world that they've only known as having artificial intelligence. Or some of us grew up in that world like pre-internet. Yeah, I know, Shannon, isn't it's wild, right? Like it's kind of mind-boggling to think about, but that's it. This is a huge transformation, almost like the Industrial Revolution. Like it makes me wonder, did they know that they were living in it when they were in it? I feel like future generations are going to look back and see this as a major historical turning point. So now we have personal access to an assistant. Students could have access to a tutor, but of course there are some cautions. And this might be something we talk about if we end up doing a later session, if there's interest in that. Academic honesty, how do we deal with data? What about hallucinations and inaccurate things and biases and equitable access? All important conversations. But for the scope of what we're talking about today, we're really going to find some practical uses for science teachers specifically. So just to give you some background, if you have Netflix or any streaming service, you've had AI. Like artificial intelligence is what tells you what to watch based on your past watching habits. And in my household, if you watch my Netflix account on my profile and you're watching your own shows, like we might need counseling because you've messed up my algorithm on my account. So if 90 Day Fiance and the British Baking Show start showing up and you didn't choose your own account, like we have to sit down and have a family conversation. So there's certain things that are like no-nos. And some of you out there who are like streamers, like you know what I'm talking about. Everybody has to have their own account because I want to get my own personalized recommendations, and you can get yours. So Netflix is an example. Another one, Amazon. If you've ever bought something on Amazon, For some reason, when I bought a toilet seat on Amazon, Amazon thinks I go through toilet seats quickly. So every 6 months, it recommends me another toilet seat. I don't know what concerns me more, whether Amazon thinks I need toilet seats every 6 months or it just keeps recommending them to me. But you get those AI kind of suggested buys based on things you bought in the past or things other people have purchased. And then if you have a smart home or you use any of these devices, your phone, you've used Lyft or Uber, any of those things all rely on a form of artificial intelligence. And many of you have been using it for a long time. In Google Docs, for example, you may or may not know this, but if you go into Google Docs and you click on tools, there's an option for voice typing where you can do speech to text. This is something that I use with my students. They may not be able to type fast, but they can communicate orally, which is the first way that we develop fluency is through oral communication. So my students will write essays, but they'll do voice typing. This is already built into Google Docs. It's been there for years. You can even put it in different languages when you're doing it. So it's a fantastic tool that's been out for a while. YouTube has automatic captioning. If you upload a video to YouTube, it'll automatically caption what you put in there. And sometimes it works pretty well, and sometimes it messes up the words depending on how well you enunciate. And sometimes I talk really fast. Google even had a program called Interview Warmup, where it simulates an interview and asks you questions back and forth so you can practice on that. Google Translate, another popular tool that's been out for a while. So these are some examples of things that people have been using that have been standard AI, things that we've gotten comfortable with, but we may not have associated it with artificial intelligence. Now that brings us to generative AI. This is the part I was talking about where things get created out of nothing. And the big one is ChatGPT. So this is from a company called OpenAI, and it simulates dialogue between two people. So if I communicate with it, it communicates back to me as if it's a knowledgeable person. Now, ChatGPT was trained on the internet from everything prior to, I think now it's 2022, approximately around that time. So that's its database that it's basing things on, and it's incredibly powerful. Right now, it's really a race from the big tech companies. Microsoft has a huge stake in OpenAI. They've integrated that into Bing, which is great for Microsoft. No disrespect to Microsoft, but there's a reason why people say Google it and not Bing it. But to be honest, Bing's AI chat is kind of one of the best ones out there. In their image generator, it's pretty top notch. And I'll show you that in a minute. So Microsoft is catching up. Bing has an AI chat where you can go back and forth. There's a lot of neat features on that. And then another company is called Claude. So we have OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude. Claude's from another company called Anthropic. You don't need to know all that. All you need to know is that you got 3 tools that work. And we're going to drop in the chat a link to these tools, just so if you want to go back and try them out, you can do that. I have a Google Doc. There you go. Shannon's on it. It's already in the chat. If you click on that, it covers all the tools that we're going to talk about if you want to play with them later. For now, I would just encourage you just to kind of watch. And if you see something that piques your interest, go, okay, I'm gonna put a pin on that. I'm gonna come back and check that out later. Now, Bard is Google's brand of a generative chatbot. And so now we have kind of 3 different ones, and you can try them all out. For the purposes of tonight, I'm really going to focus on ChatGPT. In a longer session, I'd show you the answers to the same question in all of them, but that's a little bit outside the scope of things. You can try it out on your own. I'm going to show you how I've done things with ChatGPT, and then hopefully that'll inspire you or encourage you to try some things on your own, and then share back with us what you're doing. Because if you have a great idea, we definitely want to share it with the community because we can use that to help kids. One of the areas that you can do is you can have Bard create multiple drafts of a lesson plan or an essay. You can have it give you feedback on something that you're writing. Let's see. Dan says, this what is used on websites for customer service? Yes, kind of like a simpler version of it. It's been used for a long time. So if you've ever been chatting with your bank or like Home Depot, it's usually a virtual assistant, which is a form of AI, but a less sophisticated one. If you wanted to get a response, you can communicate back and forth and ask it to give you a longer response or a more concise response or a more verbose response. Maybe you want it to write an email to a parent about hypothetically speaking, a student who threw something across the classroom while shouting. Not that that ever happens in your classroom, but hypothetically, if it did and you want to communicate to a parent, you'd have to sit there and kind of generate it. And then in your mind, you're thinking like, I got to be tactful yet clear. I don't want to sit here for an hour. these are things that we can have Bard or ChatGPT do for us. And I know some of you probably watching right now, you're like, yeah, I've been using that for several months. Some other tools, being able to recognize images. Google Docs has this built in now where you can tell Google Docs what you want it to write and it can already do it. If you are a Google for Education school, your administrator has to turn that on first. So it's not built in by default for kids. Otherwise, the writing would go way up all of a sudden and you'd feel like a really great teacher, but you wouldn't know why. Yeah, so this is already built into the Google Docs, but school administrators can turn it on or off. Our school, we have it off for many reasons. And then Bing Image Creator, where you can create images out of nothing. And this is where the big conflict is coming on with artists right now is what does it mean to actually generate something originally? If I write the prompt and AI generates it, is that my art or is that art from somewhere else? And these lead to some really big conversations. Canva is another tool that really leads the way in this. They have a lot of cool apps that use artificial intelligence. Adobe Firefly is another one. And even in Google Slides, they have artificial intelligence built in. So in the details, I'll give you links to, if you want to explore all this and go really deep down the rabbit hole, I'll share these links and put it into the support doc. But for now, what I like to do is experiment. So what I'm going to do is switch screens and I'm going to move into demonstrating how some of this works. Adobe Firefly is actually free. I want to everybody. It doesn't cost anything. So it's definitely worth checking out if you want to experiment with it. And I'm a teacher like many of you. I like free. If it costs something, I better get a lot of value out of it just because, you know, I want to make sure that I'm spending my money in the right places. All right. So let's go ahead and share this screen. And what you should see is the support doc. So right now what we've done is we've covered the 3 popular AI generative tools. And sometimes the hardest thing is like sifting through all the noise. There are so many things out there. But what I've honed and what I focused on tonight are the tools that I've gotten the most mileage out of as an educator. And I've been working on this. I've taught ed tech courses at a graduate school level, gone to the conferences. I've kind of distilled things down to just the things that I think you're going to get the most value out of. So we're going to start with using ChatGPT and how I used it to modify an assessment. So if you want, you could see the example of my chat, but what I'm going to do is demonstrate it. So what I have here is my ChatGPT account, and there's 2 versions of it. There's 3.5 and there's 4. 3.5 is free and 4 costs $20 a month. Now, if you've never used these before, what I recommend is doing the free version 3.5 and just stay there until you feel like you've tapped out and then you want to go further. I'm going to show you features in 4, but you can get some of these features in other places and I'll show you. So the first one I want to show you is how I use it to modify an assessment. So in Amplify, I use Amplify Science as a middle school teacher. I have assignments and I'm an IB teacher and my students can retake assessments multiple times. But the challenge is what happens if they retake an assessment and I've used all of Amplify's assessment? I have to rewrite that and that takes time. So what I did is I took the assignment, I took the assessment from Amplify and I uploaded it and had it learn it. And then I had it rewrite the assessment in the same tone and voice. So I went in and created a new chat. I chose GPT-4 and I got a plugin, which is like a Chrome extension. If you're not familiar with plugins or just like Chrome extensions. And my plugin was called AI PDF. And what that lets me do is upload a PDF into ChatGPT. So now I have my chat and I'm going to give it a prompt. I'm going to say, you are a science teacher creating an assessment for middle school students. I will upload an assessment. Please recreate it in a similar tone and voice as the original with a similar level of rigor. Now, one thing I want to point out, I gave it a role. And that's a tip that I want to give you if you're going to be using these things like chatbots. Tell it what it is. What do you want it to give you? Because it's going to be using every piece of data on the internet. So if you want it to give you specific advice from the perspective of someone who's an expert in human metabolism, tell it that it's an expert in human metabolism and it's read everything written about the subject. Start there. You are a school superintendent. You are a fifth grade support teacher working with multilingual learners. When you do that, it narrows down the focus and it will draw on data specific to what you tailor it, and you're going to get a better output. So imagine you can like speak and that helper will appear in that form. So the first tip I want to give you is give it a role. Now, I always like to ask, do you understand? Just to make sure it does. So it tells me it can understand. And it says, while I can't upload files, I can use a special way to be able to do that. So I'm going to switch back to a conversation I had earlier, which is here. And in this conversation, I gave it a similar prompt, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see. And then I uploaded the assessment. And for me, the assessment is actually this one right here. I took this assessment. So already generated, everything was there. I uploaded it into ChatGPT, and I wanted 3 different versions of it. And I want because that's a lot. Like there's a lot of great work that went into this, and I'm not as smart as the people over at Amplify and Learning Hall, at the Lawrence, and everything else. So I used my helper, and it did. And it said, "Thank you for providing the assessment. Based on the content, this seems like it's about glucose and oxygen and energy production, and the respiratory and digestive systems and the interplay of those things." And then it made brand new multiple choice questions. Similar NGSS standards, similar theme and context, and it generated it in seconds. Now, as I scroll down, it also gave me new written response. It only gave me 4 questions, and I wanted 12. So then I went back and I had it rewrite the assessment with 12 multiple choice questions and 2 written response. And I asked it to give me an answer key at the end. So you notice that I'm having this dialogue back and forth. I'm talking to it and I'm giving it feedback, and it's making modifications. And so it did. It gave me 12 more multiple choice questions. And then when I get down to the end, I have my 2 written response, and now I have an answer key. And then I wanted to see if I can go further. So I asked it to rewrite the multiple choice questions 5 through 12 in the similar style, because I noticed the style changed. And so it rewrote it and it improved. Now, as I move down, I'm loving that you're loving this. This is really exciting for me because I've had so much fun as a science teacher this year doing this. I asked it to change the level of rigor. Now, what are some ideas? Like, as I show you this, and feel free to drop in the chat, how might you use this? What prompt might you give it? What would you tell it to do? Could I have it change it into another language? Rewrite these questions into Spanish. I'm going to do this in real time. We're experimenting live with everybody. So as I tell it to rewrite it into Spanish, what if I'm supporting many different languages in my classroom? And maybe I don't want to use Google Translate like right now, or I don't have access to it. Now I'm getting quickly on the fly different questions all about. This is a great one. What about the reading levels to differentiate? So what if I gave it a prompt of rewrite these questions or regenerate these questions for a Lexile level of or a 3rd grade reading level? Maybe we can try that. Rewrite these questions in English, just so I know what it's saying, because my Spanish is like Spanish 3-4 high school. That's about how I'm at. English for a 3rd grade level reader. 10 Sam. Oh, yes. So you can generate more questions. Okay. So now I'm going to ask it to rewrite in English for a third grade level. In a fun science class, kids saw bubbles when they mixed the yeast with sugar. Why did the yeast make bubbles? And so maybe if you taught metabolism to third graders, this would modify it. But you notice the language that it uses becomes more, kind of simplified, more accessible for a younger student. So you can play with it back and forth. So this is one thing, just mixing up, changing your assessments, or even like, what if I wanted more rigorous questions? I wanted to go higher up in the depth of knowledge. I don't want just recall. I want some synthesis. I want some transfer. I can ask it to rewrite these questions so it promotes a higher order of thinking. I mean, the limits to this are just limited to your own creativity. And the more you collaborate with other educators, the more fun it becomes. All right. Chat, how we doing? We doing good so far? All right. Next, creating new labs. We love that. We love doing the hands-on in the labs. And we know that the literacy is important because that's where the sense making comes from. So you need both. You need the hands-on, you need the engagement, you need to do the science and the phenomena and the investigation, but you also need the reading, the communicating, the processing, the listening to make sense of it so that students can communicate, understand, and process and get to those higher orders of knowledge. So we need both. One of my professors when I used to be a student said we're all teachers of literacy. And it's so true. But what happens when you're kind of limited on, the lab ideas that you can come up with? So what I tried was I'm doing a unit right now on human metabolism. It's in Amplify. It's one of our 7th grade kind of life science. And I told it, you're a middle school STEM curriculum specialist. You're teaching a unit on this PDF. Now, you know where I got the PDF from? In Amplify, all this is all offline. So I can get all the PDFs from there. So I trained it on what the curriculum already says. Like, that's where I got everything from. It's already built in, so I could give it what's already there. I didn't have to write anything. And then I said, identify the content and the skills taught, because I want you to give me 10 more labs with supplies that could be found in a common home or classroom. Because don't give me supplies, but I have to work at CERN to be able to use. It's not helpful for me. So give me something that would be found in a common classroom. So it did. It generated 10 new ideas of some hands-on projects that we could do. And if I wanted to go deeper, I could have it explain that lab in more detail and give me all the supplies. So you see, like, cellular respiration model, digestive system in action with saltine crackers, oxygen transport with colored water, lung capacity with a balloon and a ruler, debate, making a model of the body systems. I mean, these were just 10 new ideas if I wanted to mix it up and have my students do something that was more hands-on or involved some art into it. Next, I actually took the flex extensions, which are for middle school, they're an Amplify, but there's some hands-on science labs, some enrichment, and they're really, really cool. One of the ideas that's in there, I thought I was original and I came up with it and I started doing it. And then all of a sudden it got added in there. And I was like, wait a second. I thought I was the one that invented this. It was someone else. Someone else came up with the idea, but in my head, I think I did. I took one of the flex extensions from the science lesson and I put it in there and I said, create more lessons like this. And so it did. It created a reflex lesson. So now I have like 15 new ideas that I can do with my students for new labs. Or what if you asked it, hey, I have these supplies and I want to teach about force and motion or about biomes. Create a lab using these supplies. So what if you did it backwards? You had all your supplies, you told it what you had, and then you had it create something from that. You can try that too. And I found success with it. It's not in the notes, but it's just an idea that just popped in my head when we were doing this. So moving on. One of the most important things to me, and I know many of you as a teacher, is supporting our most vulnerable students, our students with special learning needs, our students with individual education plans and things like that. But I don't have all the specialty knowledge that my colleagues with SPED credentials and expertise and who work in this every other day. So I want to pause right there. So this question, how accurate is the info? It's up to me to vet. So what I'm finding on average, depending on the question, it gets me 80 to 90% of the way there. It still requires me though. So you have to vet all of this. That's like a disclaimer for everything. So it'll get you about 80, 90% of the way there. Sometimes it gets you everywhere. It like gets you 100%, but accurate 80, 90%, unless it's hallucinating. So you're going to want to proofread everything it says. But as far as like time saver, 80, 90% is pretty good. And that's how it is right now in this like early phase. So thank you for asking that question. So I have students that have, oh yeah, Kimberly, graphic organizer. So I'll talk about that when we get to the questions. So what I did is I took a student's IEP and I copied the learning needs, but I removed all the personal information. So I copied the learning areas, the areas that the student needed support in. And here was my prompt. I gave him all of my curriculum and I said, you're a middle school teacher creating lessons for a student with an IEP. You want to provide accommodations for the assessment to better support the student. Recommend expert roles relevant to the context to have ChatGPT become. So before I even told it what to do, I said, look, this is what I'm trying to do. Tell me what roles to tell you to be. So it told me special education teacher, school psychologist, occupational therapist, speech language pathologist, reading specialist, assistive tech specialist, behavior specialist, cultural specialist, parent guardian, peer tutor. Now, I didn't want all of those. I didn't need all of those. So what I ended up telling it is I picked certain roles for it to have. And again, just to kind of, I want to backtrack a little bit. All of these chats I put here in examples in the doc. So all these chats are in there. So don't feel like you have to like, I know it feels like drinking from a fire hose. Don't feel like you have to like read all of this really quickly. It's all in there. So I copied and pasted the entire thing so you can see it and duplicate it and make it better, because you will. You're going to go and make it better and do something cool. And then hopefully you'll share it back so I can use it with my students tomorrow. So I uploaded the example IEP and asked it if it understood. And it said it did. And it said it'll take on these roles. And then it said the lesson titled Metabolism 1.3. And it started providing suggestions for what to do. Now, let me get down to, I didn't want it to summarize what it was saying. So I'm going to get down to the bottom and show it. Let's see. Here's a revised response. Okay, here we go. Provide a digital version of the reading that's compatible with text-to-speech software. The great thing with Amplify, it's already built in. Highlight key vocabulary. Use a multi-sensory approach, having tactile, visual representations. For the next section, give them sentence starters. Provide a graphic organizer. These are things that if I was a new teacher, these are things I might ask a veteran teacher to do. But if I was a new teacher, now I can collaborate. These are all great ideas that just support students. Next, in the next section, modeling molecules. Use something tactile. Use something visual. Use visual aids. Encourage the student to rephrase and let students get into collaborative discussions. This is going to help me be more intentional. And while this is good teaching and veteran teachers might know to do this, this is going to help me be more intentional with actually doing it in the lessons at specific segments of the lesson. Also, if I was writing a lesson plan and I was going to put in differentiation strategies, here they are. They're right there built in. So there's no having to kind of figure out which tool would I use. This is already offering suggestions. Now, the last one was interesting, cultural specialist. And I just want to touch on this because I feel like this is a whole other segment. Being able to access funds of knowledge of our students and apply their cultural backgrounds or their experiences really help with them to be able to understand science, literacy, and everything. I mean, learning and knowledge is like a pyramid. It just builds on top of each other. So what I ended up doing is I gave it a context that my student was from a Mexican Hispanic background. A large population of my students are about 60%. I'm in San Diego, 20 minutes from Mexico. Many of my students are first or second generation. It's a culture that is prominent at my school. And I want to make sure that I am doing everything I can to honor that and also make their lessons relevant to the things my students are bringing into classroom experiences. So I told it that's what you should know. And then it started using Mexican cuisine, like basic Mexican cuisine of tortillas for glucose and beans for amino acid. In my lesson, it uses eggs and bread, which is, pretty common. But in this case, I got to make it a little bit more personalized in there. Now, again, not perfect, but what if we all ask that question about our lessons? What if we all put in the data of our students? Are they from rural Atlanta? Are they are they multilingual learners using these languages from these countries? What if we ask the question, how can I make this lesson access the backgrounds of my students so they'd be able to relate to it more? What if everybody did that? Like, how much more engagement could that bring? It's just an interesting question, something to think about. And the great thing with this is we may not always feel comfortable talking to another human being about this because it can, sometimes you don't want to offend people or you don't want to come off wrong. But if we did it here where there's no judgment and there's safety, it might be able to give you some feedback and have you do the work a little bit further down the road and you can try it in your classroom. Now, again, there's always these disclaimers. We always want to be kind of sensitive to things. We don't want to enforce stereotypes and all of those different things. But we as teachers, we are serving whoever's in front of us. And if I can know how to contextualize what I'm teaching better for whoever's in front of me, regardless of whatever identities they have, I'm going to help them learn better. And at the end of the day, like that's what it's about. All right. Next, reading graphs and creating questions. So it can now read graphs and actually give you data. So I want to show you an example of that. So just recently, you were able to upload images into ChatGPT. And the neat thing is you can do it with your phone. You can upload images from your phone and talk to ChatGPT on the phone. I actually do this in real time during class. And the most recent one that I did with my students is I uploaded this graph of employment trends of teenagers, like where they're working in fast food. This is real data. And if you're interested, it comes from the website graphoftheweek.com. So if you're trying to teach data analysis or you want a math teacher to love you, this is a really cool site. This person, I don't know who they are, but they put a new graph on there every single week and they give you questions. Like it's done. This could be your bell ringer. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I'm a teacher and you're teachers, so I want to share this. Oh yeah, so Sandy, you know about this, right? This is all real data, legitimate source, and students analyze it. There's already questions, it's already done. So I just screenshot the graph. And the real reason between all of us I did this is I wanted to see if students could do this. I just took a screenshot of the graph and I put it in ChatGPT, and then I copied and pasted all the questions that the graph of the week shows to see if it would answer it. And it did. And most of the time it was pretty accurate. It says, what is the topic of the graph? The graph presents data related to the growth of fast food restaurants and the population of 16 to 19-year-olds in relation to the employment status of teenagers in the labor force period over 20 years. That is just from looking at the graph. I just put that graph in there. So it's analyzing the graph, analyzing data. What if your students were doing data collection and they turned it into you and they did it digitally and you were able to upload it and have it synthesize the data or answer questions about the data? Or what if you put in a graph and asked it to generate questions based on what the graph is and you attached it to an NGSS standard? Hey, come up with questions that will assess this skill with this standard based on this graph. I mean, the collaboration, the back and forth it's limitless. All right, how are we doing on time? I think we're doing okay. My folks, are you still with me out there? Sorry, when you're doing a webinar, you don't see all the little boxes. I see some people in the chat. Is everyone? Are we doing good? We got time for one more, and then we're going to do some Q&A. All right, got a thumbs up. Ryan gave me a shout out. All right, you're all with me. You're all with me. I'm excited. So this one, next thing I'm going to show you is my favorite right now. It's one of my favorites. I think this one is great with younger learners. So one of the things that has happened is, and I'm going to share my phone this time, and I'm going to show you the ChatGPT app. So let me make sure I share sound because I messed up one time before. All right, let's do screen mirroring, zoom, that. And you should see in a second, you should see my phone. It should show up. All right. Can you see my phone right now? Okay. An Apple laptop? Yes, good. So I'm screen sharing from the app in ChatGPT. In the top right-hand corner, you see little headphones. I can talk to it and I can dictate into it. And I just want to show you something that it can do. And I've been using this in the classroom lately, just trying to ideate things. And if this has sparked something in you, please share it, because it's one of the most exciting features, as basic as it is. I'm a fifth grader and my teacher is talking about claim evidence reasoning, and I don't really understand it. Can you explain it to me in a way that would help me understand?
Of course. Let's break it down together. 1. Claim. Think of a claim as making a statement or answering a question. For example, if someone asks, "Why is the sky blue?" Your claim could be, "The sky is blue because of the way Earth's atmosphere scatters sunlight." 2. Evidence. This is the proof or facts that support your claim. Using our sky example, the evidence could be, "White light from the sun contains all the colors." When it enters our atmosphere, shorter wavelengths like blue and violet scatter more than other colors.
You could all hear it, right? I just want to make
3.
sure.
Reasoning. This is where you explain how your evidence
Okay,
supports
good.
your
Thanks.
claim. So for the blue sky, you might say, because blue
I'm gonna-
lights.
I'm going to pause it there. And then I'm going to ask it something else. So it's going to continue going. That's great. Can you help me explain it to my mom, but can you explain it in Spanish?
Of course. Let's explain claim.
Can you explain it in Spanish? I touched the screen on mistake.
Of course. I'll provide a concise explanation in Spanish for you. 1. Afirmación, claim. Es como hacer una declaración o responder a una pregunta. Es lo que tú crees que es cierto. Por ejemplo, el cielo es azul. 2. Evidencia. Son los datos o hechos que apoyan tu afirmación. Usando el ejemplo del cielo.
So I'm going to pause it there. So what it's doing, it's all generating the chat. I just talk to it. So imagine personalizing so that your students could all have individualized access. That's just one example. One of the ones I had to do is I gave it a prompt. You are Albert Einstein. I want you to stay in the role as Albert Einstein, and my students will ask you questions. You know everything about Albert Einstein. You know all the biographies. Stay in character the entire time and respond as Albert Einstein would respond. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand. I am now Albert Einstein, ready to answer the questions your students might have. Let's begin. What would you like to know?
Albert, were you good at science when you were in school?
A common misconception. When I was a young boy, many believe I struggled in school, but that's not entirely true. I was always curious and had a deep fascination with nature and understanding how things work. In primary school, I did quite well in mathematics and science. However, I was not fond of the rote learning methods employed by my teachers, and I often clashed with them because of it. Later on.
Now I'm going to pause it there because you kind of get an idea. But those of you who are parents of little ones, if you want to see something that'll blow your mind and your parent and the kids can communicate, tell it that it's a fictitious character like Harry Potter or Peter Pan, and have your kids talk to it. They'll go back and forth forever talking to it. Like where this is going, like what this is, the potential this has even beyond the classroom is incredible, but it'll stay in character. And that's not my favorite voice, by the way. That's just one of the voices. You can change them. So I just want to kind of like put that disclaimer out there. Is this in the free version? No, Laura, this is in the paid version. On the phone, the speaking is on the paid version, but you could do the chat back and forth in the free version. You can do the typing, but you just can't do the speech. And the thing about the speech that's interesting is it doesn't sound like Siri or Alexa. It's kind of eerily lifelike. It sounds like you're talking to somebody, which kind of opens up like a whole new door of feelings and questions and things like that. All right, so we've done lesson design. The next thing I want to do is I want to show a program. This one's interactive teachers. So if you're on the phone, you might be able to do this, but if not, I'm going to demonstrate it for you on my computer. So let me go ahead and click share. This is a fun tool called Curipod. If you haven't used this before, it's definitely worth checking out. And what I'd like you to do is you're going to answer this question. And now, right answer, wrong answer doesn't matter. We're stress testing this. We're scientists. So I put in a question, what is artificial intelligence? And there's a very specific feature that I want to show you right now. So I'm going to click present, and it goes way too big. All right, I took up my entire screen. All right. And I'm going to click play. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to turn down this music, is can I have some of you join? Now, when you join, you're going to go to Curie.live and then put in your name. Now, you're going to put in your real name, but I see your pretend name, like your like silly name. On the back end, as a teacher, I can see your real name, but kids only see their pretend name. So it's not like kind of like Kahoot, where you're like having to play whack-a-mole with inappropriate names. This kind of gives everybody anonymity, but you can see the data on the back end. But this isn't like the cool part. I know right now it looks very Kahootish. No disrespect to Kahoot and Gimkit and Quizzes. Those are all great programs. But there's a tool in this that I really want to show you that I think is really valuable, that is only going to get better. I'll wait a few more seconds for some folks to get in. Might even be able to drop this in the chat. Let me see. Can I drop this in the chat? Let's see. No, I could just drop the code in the chat. It should give me a link. Oh, I could do this link. Will this work? Oh, yeah, we can. There we go. I dropped the link in the chat. All right. Let's see if we get to like 20. If we get to 20, that could be good. 17. Anyone else? Now you're going to have 1 minute to answer the question, what is artificial intelligence? Right answer, wrong answer doesn't matter. I just want you to see what it can do next. All right, we're at 18. That's good. If anybody wants to join, they can. All right, timer's going to start. You have 1 minute to answer the question. What is artificial intelligence? Now, there's a lot of neat things that you can do with Curipod. You could actually just type in a topic and it'll generate an entire interactive lesson plan for you in slides. It's a little outside the scope of what we're going to do, but I just want to show you this one feature because I learned about it 2 weeks ago and it got me really excited for how I could use it in the classroom. All right, we're about 34 seconds. Again, what is AI? If you want to put a silly answer, that's totally fine too. All right, we got 10 responses so far. 9 seconds. 5, 4, 3. Those of you online who are watching this in video, sorry, it's not going to work. You're just going to have to watch like the output. All right, I got the answers. Now check this out. I'm going to click give feedback. Now, when I give feedback, you don't care about my screen. Look at yours. So on your screen, what each of you have is personalized feedback. Now, there are some things that I would change about how the feedback is written, but instantly, each of you have a response based on what you said AI was. So imagine doing this with something else, like as a warm up in the class, and you're asking them, what is the hydrologic cycle? Why are trees green? How do I don't know, fish breathe underwater? Whatever it is, it could be any kind of question. And then now you all have feedback that's personalized in there. So it's kind of a neat feature that you have with something like Curipod. And there's a lot of other neat features in it, but that's one that I wanted to share with you that I just did today with my students. Can you show the feedback that was given? Yes, I can see the feedback if I look at it. So I can view results. Can you show the feedback that was given to others? Let's see. Feedback. View results right down here. Yeah, here's the response and here's the feedback. And if I want to show real names, Richard, can you see my screen on there? If I click show real names, I have Lauren, Kim, Tanya, Laura, V. So this is what they said, and this is the feedback that was given. I think that hopefully that answers your question. Awesome. All right. And as we wind down to the last two, this next one is a Chrome extension called Brisk. We do a lot of reading in science. And one of the tools that I like to use is Brisk so I can have differentiation for my class. So I'm just going to go on to a science news website, Science News for Kids. And let's find an article. With tech, farms can double up to produce power. Oh, this is kind of a weird one. Let's do Milky Way. Okay, let's do that one. Let's do the Milky Way. Okay. And I have Brisk on my other account, which would have been good to have prepared. So let me open this up over there. And there. Okay. I'm going to switch screens. The reason why I'm switching screens is because my other account is my school account. And when you use a school email account for some of these things, you get better privileges. You know, and those of you may not know, if you're a Canva user and you use your school account, you get Canva Premium if you use a school email. So I do that for some of my programs because my favorite price is free. And I just shared it with the exact same screen that I used before. So let's actually switch it. There we go. All right. Now I have Brisk active. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little Brisk icon right down here. If you can see it, I'm going to click on it and I'm going to click change reading level. And I'm going to make 4th grade and I'm going to click change reading level and watch what it does. So it's going to take that article. Here's the article right here, written for some other reading level. And what it will do and should do, hang on. Change reading level. There we go. Is it's going to take what was written in that article and it'll take the image and it should, there we go, start generating the article into a different Lexile level. Now I've done this with Amplify articles. I've done this with articles on all kinds of different websites. So I used to sit and rewrite this myself. I used to find the big words and change things. And even then it's like patchwork. Like it's like cross doing it. And they're like, what's the reading output? Like, what's the Lexile level now? I was like, I don't know. I just changed the big words into easier words. But now I can actually separate it by grade level, reading level. And it takes seconds for it to happen. And the neat thing is like this tool is free. It's one of those freemium tools where like you get the free version and there's premium. But this is something that saves me time. So when I have a unit Amplify and I want to take one of the articles, now I can make 3 or 4 different versions of the same article to accommodate my 3 or 4 different readers. Yeah, Richard. So like similar like a Newsella, right? But you can customize it and you have to hunt around and things like that. You could find any article you want. I don't know if anybody has favorite websites for articles. If you do, you can try it there. And as long as this icon pops up, you'll be able to adjust it for your students' needs. All right, I'm going to go back to my original account. I have way too many Google accounts. There we go. And I think that brings us close to the end of the demonstrations. The last one, again, my favorite, Bing image generator. I use this often. I use it every single day. It is the best image generator for me. You just need to have a Microsoft account, which is free for educators. You can make one and you could type in anything you want. I typed in, let's say, a group of diverse educators on a Zoom call eating dinner. And let's do a Zoom call about science. Eating dinner. This is not a good prompt, by the way, but we're just going to throw it in there because I want to show you the image that it puts up there. And then I'm going to show you some of the images I've been generating, as long as there's no judgment or just a little bit of judgment in this webinar. Like you can't go hard on me because I teach 7th graders. I gotta be, I gotta do some engagement. Okay. So here's some of the images that were generated. That's kind of cool. You got all kinds of different ones. But let me show you some of the ones I made. So I asked it to make a bunch of people. I'm doing metabolism right now. So I asked it to make construction workers making the human body. in response to what's happening, some of the things that are happening in the world over the weekend, especially with the tragedies and the deaths that are happening in the Middle East and parts of Israel, I had to create, we had images of different groups of students of different backgrounds. These are not things that I could just simply Google image because it's so specific. The things that I'm looking for, a bunch of students that are inside of the body traveling through it. I was doing cells and teaching about how cells eat protein and carbohydrates. Zoom different things. So like imagine with your students, you're doing all kinds of, you have an idea of the lesson you want to do and you want a customized image for that. You can type that in. My Danny DeVito one isn't up here, but I asked for Danny DeVito as if he was like Bigfoot caught on camera in the fog. It was this like really creepy photo just to see what it could do. And it came out with some wild stuff. So try it and do it with your students and they find it super engaging. So this is with Bing Images. And out of all of the ones that are out there, this is free and the results are pretty good. If you're a Star Wars person, you can come up with some really cool Star Wars ones too. Okay. I went a little longer than I intended, but I did want to answer any questions that I could. Shannon, I apologize. I went really hard in the paint on that one because I was really excited.
No problem. Everyone else was also very excited, so it all worked out. Let me see here. Flip my slides, which is nothing crazy, just Q&A slide. So you did a great job of answering all the questions as they happen. There was one that came in through the Q&A that I wanted to ask. So even though most of your, and now people are definitely going to send more questions in the chat, but even though most of these tools were from a teacher's perspective, like using them to build lessons, are there any that you would recommend to let students access directly? One person was saying that the ChatGPT, you have to create an account, which can be tricky for students if you have asked them to enter their phone number or personal information. But are there any tools that you would rather students like kind of play around with to complete assignments?
So the only one that is really student friendly and facing that I've seen is the one through Khan Academy, but that's the one that they actually built using ChatGPT with guardrails that will be a tutor for students. Everything else, because this is so new, is kind of Wild West. So I think the minimum age for this is 13, I think is what they reduced it to. But what I've noticed teachers doing, especially ones that are teaching little ones, is they're using their account and then doing it with the class, and the teacher is inputting information and they're kind of being that filter in between versus giving students kind of free reign. With older ones that have cell phones and things like that, because you need to verify it with a phone number, they're over 13, they have a phone number, they can verify it. But for the little ones, the teachers that I've seen using it, they're kind of using it in front of the class and letting students kind of come up and talk to it, or they're coming up with prompts and they're making it more of a collaborative thing. So short answer, no, there isn't one thing for students who are younger that I've seen that's out yet.
And that's a great way to like kind of show how you can use this different grade levels too. You're just such a good teacher, Eric. And then someone just asked, could you get the GPT chatbot to sound like Albert Einstein?
So with what I showed you, I think there's only like 7 or 6 voices. So you kind of have to pick one. I got called out by a student, by the way. I had to be Harry Potter, and it didn't sound like Harry Potter because it didn't have a British accent, and I got called on it. So no, you're limited in voices. There are more sophisticated tools that can clone voices. That's a whole other session. I'm working on my AI version of me that looks like me and takes my voice and makes new words. It has to record me reading for a while, and then it can duplicate my sound and then make me say things I've never said before. I've also created an AI bot for one of the characters in Amplify's curriculum called Elisa Rodriguez. And let's see, how do we really know how Harry Potter? That's actually, Robert, that's a great question. And I wish I was you when I got called on that question because, yeah, that's just a movie. That's just a character playing Harry Potter. How do you know how he really sounds? He could have had a New Jersey accent. Why not?
And I think some of the other questions that came through the Q&A, you kind of already answered, so I'm going to type the answers to those. But now we have, do you know of a graphic organizer generator or worksheet generator for special education students or elementary students using science content?
So graphic organizer, one of the things I want to try is I actually made one in ChatGPT, like a KWL chart, or depending on what you're looking for. So let's actually do this in real time. Kimberly, do you have a topic that you might want a graphic organizer for? Just a topic. About the senses. Okay. So what I've done, and I'll share my screen on this one. Oh, Shannon, can you change the share screen permissions? So I did this in ChatGPT, and what it told me is it couldn't directly create a visual graphic, but what it did is it gave me the code for it to be able to be put into like a spreadsheet, like a Google Sheet or something. So if I told it what I wanted it to create as far as columns and rows, it could do that. What I could also do, where my head goes with this, is Canva has a new process called Magic Design. They just rolled it out this week, and Magic Studio. Actually, let's try this. Let's see, graphic organizer about the human senses. Yeah, and it just generated several graphic organizers, and you may have to pick kind of like which one you like on here, but it'll give you a template and it'll start generating different things. You can even do it like with specifics. So my first two thoughts are ChatGPT and then Canva, because that's like a really good graphics design website. That's what I'm using. But there isn't one program that I found right now that is really just dedicated to that. What you're going to see is a lot of programs that really use Bard, ChatGPT, or Claude, and then it puts a beautiful kind of like web interface, but all it's doing is just connecting to those programs, and then they're charging you for it. So I like sharing with people like the actual source of it. They've been listening to hypotheses and the reasoning mystery of the. Oh yeah. So I would actually type that into ChatGPT, even the free version, and see what it comes up with, and ask it to create a graphic organizer.
All right, everybody. Well, we're 5 minutes over, but thank you, Eric, for really answering these questions. And that was a wonderful additional demonstration for all the things you shared today. Before we go, I want to thank everyone for staying on and joining us. If you're on the East Coast, for joining us late. If you're on the West Coast, I'm glad we could finally do a webinar that is more appropriate for your schedule. If you want more resources, I put them here, and I'm also sending them in the chat. Here's a link again to all the wonderful resources Eric went through today. If you want to find more classroom resources, we're currently doing a We Are Scientists giveaway that helps you hold a science seminar in your class, has some nice tips for you. You can hear more from Eric on the Science Connections podcast. He's wonderful and always has some awesome experts and educators on to talk about how we can continue inspiring a love of science in classrooms everywhere. If you want to learn more about Amplify Science, just go to amplify.com/science. And if you currently have Amplify Science, please join our Facebook community. There's always lots of fun stories and tips from our other educators, whether they're success stories or horror stories. It's always a helpful little resource for you to have in your back pocket. So thank you again, everybody. Eric, you were amazing. Thank you so much for this. And hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.